It is a novel component at 90 degrees from the antenna plane. This detail of the outer ring shows the gap spheres, the protruding spheres, and the layout of the silk bracing wires. Suspension of the inner rings with silk wire would allow physical as well as the electrical oscillation. This schematic from Lakhovsky's 1934 U.S. patent, apparatus with circuits oscillating under multiple wavelengths, shows a different antenna hookup than the electrotherapeutic devices pictured in his books. This is quite easy to understand, as the patent is for multiple wave oscillators in general, and it is written to cover infinite variations on the theme. In describing the antenna and hookups, the patent states, "These rings may be arranged either in the same plane or in different planes. These rings may be fed by any producing device whatever of high frequency. One of several points of this high frequency circuit is or are connected to the end of one or several of the rings forming the radiating apparatus." We can see Lakhovsky hid his construction details well. However, many researchers have used this patent as a basis for building equipment to test the concept of restoring cellular equilibrium. A modern-day researcher named Eric Dollard, author of various texts on high-frequency electrical researches, has done some serious investigation towards discovering the correct circuit layout of the original equipment. He suggests that the power supply is a high-voltage transformer, and the tubes holding the antennae contain capacitors and quench spark gaps hidden from view. This circuit excites the outer ring of the antenna, and the inner rings act as secondaries of various sizes, producing a wide range of frequencies. Here is an extension of this circuit, providing the wiring layout for two antennae. This circuit would not have to be high power, as Lakhovsky stated that he cured cancer with 10 to 12 watts, and of course also with no power in his oscillating rings. Scaling the antenna in logarithmic proportions provides a field of frequencies and harmonics acting in concert. This multi-wave oscillator antenna was designed using the square root of the golden ratio, and it was discovered that without any electrical stimulation, it propagates a field beneficial to plant life. Lifelike golden ratio electric discharges have been photographed around experimental high-frequency apparatus, and a golden ratioed plant-like pattern has been burned into this block of wood with a Tesla coil. This is an experimental setup following Eric Dollard's MWO suggestions. What we have here is an old medical coil from 1919. It has low frequency, high frequency, and mid-range frequency called the D'Arsonval currents. And what we're using for ease of setup here is the mid-frequency. The antenna can be excited with high frequency or low frequency. And so the mid-frequency feeds into this little arrangement here, which is two high voltage capacitors with a spark gap crossing them, as in the schematic. Now this is what was in the tube in Lakhovsky's original. So the force came out, and these screws holding the capacitors in would represent those protruding spheres. And of course, this printed circuit antenna represents the hanging tube antenna of Lakhovsky. And to simulate the ball capacitance, these antennas have reverse strips to cover the gaps. I'm going to turn this on just to show you it sparking. It has a spark gap adjustment here to provide the oscillations. And this spark gap here, now these would all be contained in Lakhovsky's original, so you wouldn't see any sparking during operation. And you will notice that there will be no brush discharge off of this. It's not high enough power to provide that. And what you're looking for in units like this is not really high power, but quality of power. Lakhovsky received a second patent in 1944, tube for producing multiple wavelengths. This is again a general patent, but mentions industrial and medical fields. This illustration from that patent shows a bulb containing either a vacuum or low-pressure noble gases and a similar antenna hookup to his first patent. This lends credence to the suggestion that the original units had noble gases inside the tubes, as this bulb would provide an easier method of manufacturing a device to produce the same effect. This bulb shows a single wire circuit exciting the top conical coil, which would excite the secondaries of various proportional lengths. This gives more clues to Lakhovsky's secret, and the patent is worded to cover log periodic scaling of antennae, such as in the golden ratio units. In 1891, Oskar Korschelt received German patent number 69340 for an ether radiating apparatus, whose intent was to accumulate living etheric forces from the cosmos and direct them for therapeutic purposes. This unit consisted of two opposing spiral antennae, manufactured from wire or chain and connected through the center. The antenna could be electrified to produce increased power. This drawing shows an antenna similar to the Korschelt device, but produced a full century after. It is physically vibrated and can also be electrified to produce increased power. The antenna diagram you just saw for the spiral wire antenna is embodied in this unit here, built by Lou Shad. First of all, we have a PVC stand which swivels. And here we see the antenna, which was pictured in the diagram. It's horizontal to the ground, made out of double twists of bare copper wire. And that just hangs free here, coming down on a single wire. Below that there's a smaller spiral, and then there's a little antenna coming up like this to pick up vibrations. Now, there's variations on this, but the main part of it is this flat antenna here. And there's two coils here which are identical, and through these 12 volts DC can be applied to the antenna to provide electrification. This aquarium pump serves no other purpose but to physically vibrate the apparatus, which provides the oscillations of the antenna. Now, pulsed 12 volt DC can be fed in through these two small coils,